Creating posters with PowerPoint. The objective is that by the end of this presentation, you will be able to first distinguish between conceptual and scientific posters, and then demonstrate the ability to create a simple poster in PowerPoint. There are two basic types of posters that you are likely to need to create in an academic setting. The first is a conceptual poster. It captures and communicates some concept visually to make it more accessible to those you're trying to communicate that concept to. The second is the scientific poster. In that, you're trying to capture and communicate a whole scientific experiment or project using, yes, still some imagery, but far more words than you typically use on a conceptual poster. The most common tool people use these days to create posters is PowerPoint. If you happen to have more graphic expertise, you know of some other method that is going to work so much better for you, don't limit yourself. Just make sure that your final product is in whatever format is required. So, since most of you, I imagine, will be working in PowerPoint, let's start with how to do that. The first three steps seem fairly straightforward. You're going to open PowerPoint, you're going to select a slide design, and you're going to set the slide size. So, I'm already in PowerPoint, so I just need to create a new PowerPoint. I'm going to start with a completely blank canvas. And by completely blank, I also want these little boxes that come in by default gone. So I click on it. See how I get that little compass of arrows there? That tells me I've got hold of that box and I can move it in any of those directions. What I want to do is just hit the delete button. And I'm going to do the same for this subtitle box, because I don't want either of those things. Now, for purposes of your project for Nursing 609, you can leave this at the default setting, because ultimately all of your slides are going to be put into a presentation that is going to be shown in the class. So it's actually easiest if they all use the default size. But some of you may want to change the orientation of your poster because you're also using it in your portfolio, and maybe you just think that you can represent what you want more clearly if you are in what's called portrait orientation as opposed to landscape. So let's see what that would look like. Let's go into Design, and here's where you've got a button for slide size. So I can leave it at the standard widescreen, or I can do a custom slide size. Over on this part of the pop-up box, you can switch from landscape, which is the default, to portrait. And if you did need to change the dimensions, for example, if you were doing your ENHP Day poster, you would need to change this to 24 by 36 inches. There's nothing on the slide, so there's no need to maximize or ensure fit. Doesn't matter, just pick one. It is definitely better to work with the size of your slide before you have any elements on it, because then you do have to worry about do I need to maximize things? Do I trust what it's going to do when I tell it to ensure fit? Just get your slide size correct first, and you won't have to worry about it. Okay, so now I have my blank canvas, which is standing up in portrait orientation. Now what? The next thing is, how am I going to lay this out? I'm going to place the images first. It is usually easier to work text around images rather than images around text. As far as image quality, you're better off importing or inserting rather than using copy-paste. You tend to get a better quality result. Not as big of a deal when you're doing an electronic-only presentation as you are doing in this class, but something to keep in mind for situations where you may need to print a poster. You need to check the size and the resolution of the graphics. Make sure they're not going to pixelate when they're printed at a larger size. You can check, and I highly recommend that you check anything you're going to print on a very large screen before printing. If you happen to have access to a smart TV and can do that at home, wonderful. If not, you do have access to the collaboration pods here in the library, which do have substantially sized screens, can give you an idea whether something is going to blow up correctly or not. That still doesn't always guarantee the quality that the printed version is going to look like, but it gives you a much better idea than just your regular computer screen. Also, make sure any images are yours to use, which means ideally take or create a picture yourself. You can draw it, you can take a picture digitally, much easier to do these days than ever, and if you happen to know how to crop and do all sorts of interesting things to it, that's great. You don't necessarily have to. If that's not an option, then next up would be using something that's licensed under Creative Commons, and make sure you attribute it as the creator has indicated is appropriate. Or, and I would recommend this option if you're not taking your own pictures for something you're going to print, purchase the images. The artists who put their work out there online usually don't put the highest quality out there because it's not going to print that well. Buy the image from them, and it's usually not that expensive. Then you've supported them in their work, which is important because we want to be supported in our work. We need to support the artists in theirs, and you will get the higher quality picture that should show up well on your final product. So I need to go find an image for this demo that I'm creating. I'm going to go into Google, go for an image search, and since I'm doing this for perspective transformation, I'm going to start out with the completely uninspired search term of transformation. And I'm going to go into my search tools because I want to make sure that anything I find I can actually use. So I wasn't finding the image I planned to use from the last time I searched this, so I cheated and searched on the actual title of the picture. So here we have something that I decided was a little less cliche than the butterfly, and I need to go, I've clicked on that. I have the option to either just view the image or visit the page. I want to know how to attribute this artist correctly, so I'm going to visit the page. So this is an image hosted on DeviantArt, which is a site where lots of artists host their work. And this artist has chosen to go by Bast13. For a professional conference, I would highly recommend finding an image whose artist is using a more familiar looking name structure rather than something that's more of an internet handle. But I'm going to save the image as, and I don't need to replace it because I had already saved it. And I want to check and figure out what the year is. Okay, well, looks like 2013. Maybe that's why she was going by Bast13, or he was going by Bast13. So, yeah, that's what we're going to go with for attribution. And the licensing option that I had searched under was labeled for non-commercial reuse. That'll be important in a moment. So now going back to my blank canvas, I'm going to go to the Insert tab, Insert Picture, Artista's Transformation. Okay. By default, PowerPoint will stick whatever image you insert smack into the middle of the slide, so you're going to have to move it around. You're also going to need to resize it. To make your life better, less confusing, I would recommend not dragging the corner and resizing that way, because sometimes you end up with distortion even if you think you are making sure that it will not distort. What I'm going to do here, I had set the width of this slide to 24 inches, so I'm just going to make it somewhat smaller and make it 20 inches. I'm only changing the width, so it's going to keep the height proportional. There we go. Now, once again, I'm going to click so that I've got the little 4-point compass there and just drag the whole thing up. It's not going to give me any guidelines about centering or anything like that at the moment, so I kind of have to eyeball it. But that's okay, we can always move things later. Leave a little room for a title, and there we go. Okay, so now that I have a picture, I have some idea what I would like the background to look like. So I'm going to click on Design. And it's sort of a springy type thing, so I'm going to go with this grass green springy background. Possibly not the best choice, but it's what I'm going with. To attribute this properly, I'm going to have to insert some text. So going to the Insert tab again, come over here to Text Box. And basically anywhere I click, I can start typing. So CC BY is Creative Commons All You Need Is Attribution, but this artist had also set it to non-commercial use only. And 2013. I'm going to highlight all of that and shrink it down a bit because it doesn't need to be quite that large. 48's even still a little. How about 40? So it really doesn't need to. You know what? That can even go smaller. If it were going to be a poster, the main thing would be that if somebody's up close, they can read it. Not something that needs to be visible from across the display hall. I'm going to go with 32 point. It's readable. Now, see, when I drag this up to align it, it'll tell me when I'm aligned with the right margin of the image. It'll also tell me with those little red dotted lines when I am flush with the bottom of it. So now I have properly attributed my image so that it is very clear I did not draw this myself. Also, since it has a watermark, I probably would have emailed the artist to see are they selling it with a non-watermarked version, which probably would only be a couple of bucks if I wanted to do that. Or maybe if I told them I was using it for a class, they might just say, oh sure, here, just use this for your class. Okay, so that's the first bit of text we're adding. So when you're doing a scientific poster, you've got quite a bit more text that you need to organize and bullet and all of that. For that, you really might want to type it all out in Word first, but you can still just add a text box, same as we did for that attribution, and just start typing, and then figure out where to put it. As you saw with the little attribution text box, you can pick it up and move it wherever you like. So to create my title, I can go up to the top and say Perspective Transformation. Testing my wings. Okay. You don't have to get fancy with the font. If you want to, I would suggest, again, bear in mind the lesson from your APA format. For APA format, you can only use either Arial or Times. You're not restricted to that extent with posters, although you should still keep it fairly professional looking, i.e. do not do not use Comic Sans or anything that looks like it belongs on a lemonade stand or is named lemonade stand. You can choose fonts that are more interesting, just make sure they do still feel like they've got a professional look to them. So I'm not crazy about this Corbel. Isn't that the name of some kind of champagne or something? I don't want this script that's very hard to read, really fancy, not so much. I do want to, since this is going to be an electronic only presentation, I want to stick with non-serif, meaning I don't want the little wings hanging off the sides of the letters. Could use something like, technically Comic Sans, but yes, again, please don't. It does not look professional at all. But something like Century Gothic. I like that a little better for my title. And I want to make it a little bigger. Besides, 51.8 is an odd size, so I'm going to make it 54. Okay. And see how when I grabbed that and moved it, it gave me the red dotted line to show me when I had it centered over the picture? There you go. So now I know it's centered. Having changed the font once doesn't mean it's changed everywhere, so if I want to continue with that, I need to, and it is a good idea for everything to be consistent. Of course, now that just made it extend out a bit. There we go. And let's get some more text on here. Not a whole lot, because again, this is a conceptual poster, but what are some of the things that I'm associating with my experience of perspective transformation and testing my wings in this first MSN course? Well, the MBTI made a big impression on me. Let's get that in the same font. Learning styles. Doing scholarly writing was kind of a big deal, and really, if I'm smart, I'm going to change the font before I start typing. Insert, text box. And one other thing, because I'm thinking 5 will work nicely for this particular one. There's no magic number. Okay, there we go. So they don't need to be all blocked out completely, but it would be nice if they weren't quite so messy. So I'm going to start by clicking on this. Again, wait till I've got my 4-point compass. Okay, it's already aligned with the left of that, so that's a start. I think I want learning styles at the same. Okay, so now it's showing me it's at the same level as MBTI, but it's not showing anything that tells me it's lined up with the image yet. So there we go. Now I've got, there we go. I'm lined up with the image and with the MBTI piece that I had already put in. These bits at the bottom. Oh, that one lined up nice and easily. So piece process and portfolios are already well aligned with each other. Just need to get them in line with the image. And I'm going to choose to put scholarly writing front and center, which is going to be a little more difficult. There we go. Okay. I didn't leave myself any place to put my name, so I'm going to have to rethink a couple of these. Bring that up a little bit. Now if I want to select both of these guys, there's a couple of ways to do it. I can hit the Control button and select one and select the other, and then move them together, move them up, and that works nicely. If I wanted to select everything, I can click somewhere way outside create this shadow box that goes around everything, and it will select all of the elements. If I needed to move all of the elements up, down, side, side, back where they came from. Actually, let's move them all up just a wee bit more so I have a little more room for my name. Because you do always want your name on your work. So, final text box. You also always want your affiliation. Sometimes that's where you work, sometimes that's where you're going to school. It's the affiliation that makes the most sense for the thing you are creating. I want it centered under the picture and under scholarly writing. I could put it off to the right or off to the left. I could put it up at the top. There's nothing magic about these specific alignments. In fact, it's actually kind of a boring alignment that I've chosen. But it at least has all the elements I want. It has an image that sort of captures the idea of, oh, hey, I've just discovered I have wings. Let me test them out. And goes from there. So yes, your name, degree, and affiliation should be visible. With a logo, if appropriate. I don't have handy a plain University of Hartford logo to pass off to you at the moment, and this is just something that's being shown within the class, so not as big of a deal. But for a professional conference, such as ENHP Day, such as something at your workplace, you would want the logo of your professional affiliation that is relevant to be on there, which again might be your workplace, might be where you're attending school, might be both in some situations. Also, if it is a professional presentation where you are going to be interacting with all sorts of people who are checking out your work and may want to contact you and you would like them to be able to contact you, your contact information should be on there. Usually people just put their email address. Some people these days are using QR codes on professional posters. Not something to worry about for this class, something to bear in mind. If you find yourself with the opportunity to learn how to create and use one, they can be very useful when you attend ENHP Day. You may or may not see that some of the presenters have done that with their codes. And what a QR code is that little postage stamp looking box full of blobs of ink that means nothing to the human eye but means a lot to a QR code scanner. And when you scan that, it will bring you whatever information the creator of the poster wants you to have. It might bring you a copy of their abstract. It might bring you to their website that has way more information about the whole project. If they already have a paper published on the project and it's open access, the QR code may bring you to that. So there's a whole lot more that you can make available to people through your poster using those codes. I do believe that going forward that is going to become more and more common. I have found that so far they are somewhat glitchy. I have not always been able to access what the creator intended me to access by scanning their QR code with my phone. And you do need a smartphone that has a QR code scanner. If you have a smartphone, you can go download an app that will do that. But not everybody knows how to create them, not everybody knows how to use them, so they're not really universal yet. But since it is becoming more common, figured I should put it out there. Now, you may find that at work, particularly along the way, as people know that you are working on your master's, they say, hey, we're going to send you to go do this presentation. In fact, that's already happened to one of you. So, you may need to print a poster. You can use Howie's Printery, which is in the Hillier building down in room 135. It is usually your least expensive option. It's handy because it's right here. But if it's easier for you to use a Staples, a Kinko's, an Office Max, whatever, because it's closer to where you live, or because you're coming up on ENHP Day and everybody's using Howie's Printery and their turnaround time is too long, then you might want to use one of those other options. Any of them are fine. Before you print anything, first of all, yes, you're checking on a nice big screen, making sure everything looks nice and is going to blow up properly and not pixelate. And always, 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 always. Did I mention always? check the specifications of where you are presenting. Maybe it needs to be laminated, maybe it doesn't. Maybe it needs to be mounted, maybe it doesn't. For ENHP Day here at the University of Hartford, neither of those things. Not laminated, not mounted, and that's because of the way we display the posters. There are so many posters at ENHP Day that what they've been using for the last few years, and what I presume they're also using this year, are these sort of fold-out partitions that have a very rough fabric to them that grabs Velcro. They put the little Velcro tabs on the back of the posters and put them on these panels. It works really well as long as the posters are just on whatever the standard paper is that the printers use to print posters. If you add lamination, and especially if you mount it, it's not going to stay. It's not. There's no way. It's going to fall down. Nobody's going to be able to see it. It's going to get walked on. But I can give you an example of the opposite case where some students decided to show their poster from ENHP Day at another event, which was the Connecticut Public Health Association's annual meeting. It was a great poster for that meeting, but they didn't check the specifications, which were quite different. The size dimensions were quite different, and posters for that conference were required to be mounted, and that's because at that particular conference they were using tripods or easels to display the posters. Well, if you take a non-laminated, non-mounted poster and stick it on an easel, it's just going to roll in on itself and nobody can see it. So that did not work well. Please do not let that happen to you. What a better choice would have been to take the file from the original poster and reprint it with the correct specifications, because it did also need to be a larger size in that particular instance. So, just to reiterate, always check the specifications of where you're printing, check them again, check them one last time right before you let the printer actually do anything. So, the other piece that goes with the poster is an abstract. And abstracts can either be descriptive or scientific depending on the purpose. For a conceptual poster, you're more likely to do a descriptive abstract. For a scientific poster, surprise, surprise, you're going to do a scientific abstract. So since you are doing a conceptual poster here in Nursing 609, your assignment is going to be to create a descriptive abstract. For ENHP Day, it'll be scientific. And you will see plenty of those when you go on the 20th of April. For most professional presentations, the abstract actually comes first because you use it to propose what you want to present. Sometimes you're sending that as a proposal and you don't even know if you're going to be doing a poster or an oral presentation. They decide based on what they think of your abstract. Oh, sure, we'd like you to speak about that, or we'd like you to give us a poster about that. So you're not creating anything until after you get word on the abstract. So that's how things tend to typically go. In this instance, you're probably going to be creating them more or less at the same time because you're making decisions about what's on your poster at the same time as you're describing it, or you're creating the poster and then describing it. When you do go to a conference such as ENHP Day, do always have plenty of printed copies of your abstract to hand out. Even if you use a QR code, as I said, they sometimes glitch out. Maybe something got smudged in the printing process. Maybe somebody's QR scanner isn't working that well. Who knows? Technology has a number of ways that it can glitch out. And if you can at least hand them your abstract, then they can see what the poster was about and remember why they wanted to contact you, as opposed to just giving them a business card and they get home from the conference and they have 50 business cards and no idea what each one was collected for or why they wanted to contact this person. So always have plenty of copies of your abstract to hand out at conferences. You do not need to have them to hand out for Nursing 609, just submit it as a regular assignment. Here are some online resources that you may find helpful for further information. They are focused more on scientific posters to explore at your leisure. Any questions? Please bring them on over to discussion board so that you can thrash them out with your colleagues, and I'll pop in now and then to add my 2 cents. Wait a minute, I forgot one other piece, and I have no slide for this, but you need to submit your poster for 609 as a PNG file, and most of you don't know how to do that. Honestly, it probably doesn't matter. You could save it as a GIF, as a JPEG, whatever. The main thing is that you need to save it as some sort of graphic format, but I've chosen PNG because it seems to be the one that has the fewest problems come up with it. So if you go into your File menu, as I just did, and go to Save As, let me go back. Click File, Save As, and I want to get back into my 609 Spring of 2016 folder. And there's already a presentation 1 in there, so I'm going to just call it presentation 2. This bottom line you probably almost always ignore when you save files. I don't want to save this as a PowerPoint presentation. I want to save it as a Portable Networks Graphic Format graphic, or PNG file. That makes it much easier to then incorporate this image into a PowerPoint for the rest of the class to view as a slideshow. And save. It's going to ask which slides you want to export. Since I'm only even have one slide, I tend to choose just this one because I don't know if it's going to throw in some random blank. So just because I don't trust Microsoft products not to do strange things like that. And there we go. It is now saved. If I look in my folder, presentation 2 exists as a PNG image, and now I can turn that in as my assignment. Now we're done. Now go bring your questions over to discussion.